You thought they didn't love you, that they lost interest, that maybe you just weren't enough. But what if the real rejection didn't come from them? What if it started in your own mind, long before they ever walked away? In the next few minutes, you'll see how the voice inside you, the one you trust the most, might be silently sabotaging your connections, your worth, your life. Not because you're broken, but because your story was. This is the part where you stop chasing closure and start finding yourself. Most people think rejection is simple. Someone walks away. Someone doesn't text back. Someone doesn't choose you. But what if that moment, the one you keep replaying, wasn't the beginning? It was just the trigger. Because long before they left, your own mind had already prepared the exit. That's not heartbreak. That's psychological rejection. It begins with quiet, invisible scripts. Subconscious beliefs like, I'm too much. I'm not enough. I'm not safe being seen. So when someone pulls away, you don't just feel hurt. You feel confirmed. And that's emotional self-sabotage. It's not weakness. It's an old defense. But if you don't see it, this rejection trauma keeps repeating until it starts to look like your identity. And all the while, your self-worth is quietly bleeding beneath the surface. This story doesn't start with them. It starts with a younger version of you, sitting quietly, learning how to disappear just to stay loved. That was your first rejection. And it didn't come from outside. It came from you. Somewhere in the past, you were taught that certain parts of you weren't welcome. Your anger, your sadness, your voice, your needs. So you cut them out, not because you wanted to, but because your survival depended on it. That's how childhood rejection becomes a life script. You learn to anticipate abandonment, so you'd abandon yourself first. If I don't ask for too much, maybe they won't leave. But here's the cost. Every time you quieted your truth, you signed an invisible contract, saying, I agree to disappear if it means you'll stay. And so began the pattern. Your own self-sabotaging loop, masquerading as love. This isn't just pain, it's emotional abandonment you learn to perform on your own body. But the moment you see it, you can start inner child healing and break the oldest betrayal of all, the one where you left you. The mind is not your enemy. It's your protector. But sometimes protection becomes a prison. When you've lived through attachment wounds, your brain builds shortcuts, so it can predict pain before it happens. But those shortcuts, they become subconscious patterns. Patterns that say, choose someone who won't choose you. Push them away before they can leave. Sabotage anything that feels safe. That isn't love. It's repetition compulsion. Your nervous system reenacting a wound until it finally gets resolved. You think you're reacting to them, but you're actually responding to your past. That tension in your chest, that urge to run, that overthinking spiral, they're not flaws. They're trauma responses. You're not weak. You're triggered. Triggered by invisible moments that echo back to a time when rejection meant survival. But the good news is, if your mind learned these patterns, it can unlearn them too. Somewhere along the way, you created a version of yourself that they would never leave. You smiled when it hurt. You agreed when you didn't. You gave more, just to be enough. That wasn't you. That was the false self. A carefully constructed identity, not to express who you are, but to prevent abandonment. Psychologists call it the persona. Jung called it the mask you wear so society will let you in. But here's the truth. Every time you hide your truth to stay loved, you're not being loved. Your mask is. And behind every people-pleasing behavior is a secret contract. If I become who you need, maybe you won't leave. But they still left, didn't they? Not because you weren't enough, but because you weren't there. Just a projection, a performance, a self-rejection in disguise. They didn't abandon you. They abandoned the mask you handed them. And maybe that mask was never yours to wear. Sometimes you weren't in love with them. You were in love with what they reflected. That feeling of being seen, that intensity, that high. It wasn't connection. It was emotional mirroring. You didn't want them. You wanted the part of you they awakened. The confidence, the freedom, the fire you forgot you had. That's projection psychology. You project the unloved parts of yourself onto someone else and call it fate. Carl Jung called them the anima and animus, the inner man or woman we search for in others instead of discovering in ourselves. They weren't your soulmate. They were your unconscious attraction to something you lost. And when they left, you didn't just lose a person. You lost access to the version of you you only met in their presence. So the real question isn't, why did they leave? It's, why did you need them to remember who you are? The good news? You're not stuck in this story. Not anymore. Because what was written in pain can be rewritten in awareness. You don't need to chase unavailable people to prove your worth. You don't need to keep bleeding for someone to call it love. You can break the trauma loop by turning inward, not outward. Start by noticing the pattern. Why do I shrink when I feel close to someone? Why do I feel safest in rejection? These aren't flaws. They're coordinates. Your psyche's way of pointing to the wound. Now pause. And instead of reacting, choose. Choose to speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Choose to stay, even when your fear says run. Choose to meet the part of you you always abandoned. This is the individuation process Jung spoke of. Reclaiming the shadow, reprogramming the nervous system, healing attachment wounds, without asking someone else to do it for you. Because the real exit was never their goodbye. It was the moment you decided to stay. They didn't reject you. They reacted to the version of you that was shaped by fear. By the time they met you, you had already trimmed yourself down into something safer, smaller, more acceptable. That's not who you are. And deep down, you've always known. The journey back isn't about being chosen by others. It's about self-acceptance. It's about emotional reparenting, giving your inner child the love they've been outsourcing for years. You are not too much. You are not unlovable. You are not broken. You are simply someone who believed a story that was never yours. It's time to stop editing yourself to fit their world and reclaim your identity in your own. They didn't reject you. Your wounds did. Your fear did. Your silence did. But the truth of you, the messy, vibrant, wild you, was never even in the room. You're not here to perform, or prove, or please. You're here to remember. That trauma isn't truth, and survival isn't the same as living. The healing? It doesn't come from them. It begins when you come home to yourself. Rejection is loud, but wholeness is quiet. And now, you get to listen to that silence and finally reclaim your power. So if this felt familiar, if something inside you softened or woke up, don't scroll past it. Watch the next video. We'll go deeper into the silent contracts that still run your life until you're ready to tear them up, one belief at a time. You're not too late. You're just on your way home.